Yeah, we'll just jump in. Okay, great. All right. Parshas Yisro. There's a lot. There's a lot in Yisro. So since it's just going to be us for at least for the meantime. So I'm going to throw out a question. First of all, I just want to tell you, if anybody tells you like I know all the Jewish stuff, I don't need to hear more. Like, don't tell me about it. If you want to like stop them cold, ask them. Yeah, no problem. Like, what's the Ten Commandments? Can you tell me the Ten Commandments? If you get a positive answer from that, like the guy must be like a crazy Talmud Chacham. You know what I mean? And I'm not putting you guys on the spot. I'm the only reason I know it is because I put myself on the spot before and realized like if I don't have an answer, I'm going to be in trouble. Anyway, so there are. Sorry. So there are. We all know that there are obviously. Let me just do this over here. There are, in general, there's the first five of the luchos, which is mitzvahs ben adam l'makom, and then the second five are mitzvahs ben adam l'chabero. That's a well-known thing, obviously. All right, so just to go through them. So on the first five, I hope I get this one right. I can ask you guys, but let me just do this for the sake of time. I am Hashem, have no other gods. Don't take my name in vain. Just a second. Shabbos and honor your parents. Okay. Then on the other side is don't kill, don't kidnap, don't commit adultery, don't swear, don't testify falsely, and don't covet. Don't desire your neighbor's property, etc. So if you think about, let's say, but mitzvah men on the makom, right? Mitzvahs between us and Hashem. If you were to think like, what's the main thing in those mitzvahs? So most people would say, if you were to ask for a person, is what's the most important thing between ourselves and Hashem? Our belief in Hashem, the words that we say expressing the respect towards Hashem, or the deeds that we do, whatever, keeping Shabbos, etc. What's the most fundamental quality in our relationship between man and Hashem? So you could answer, or I'll answer for myself, because I'm obviously leading up to my own answer, which is mitzvahs between ourselves and Hashem is primarily our faith, right? Without that faith, I have to give a share. I'm sorry, I can't take it.
Can I come back with the car at 3 o'clock? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you have to, whatever. It's not great, but yeah. Anyway, so but when you talk about the mitzvahs between man and man, so in general, if you had to pick those three, like what's more important? If I should think well about my fellow man, I should speak well about my fellow man, or I should do things well towards my fellow man. And in general, we would say action is more essential when we deal with people. All right. So the first, when we deal with the mitzvahs between ourselves and Hashem, in general, we are relating more to the mitzvahs of thought and how we process, what we think, our faith, etc. We deal with the mitzvahs between ourselves and fellow man. In general, we think in terms of the mitzvahs that are more action-oriented. So what's so fascinating is, if you take the Ten Commandments, right? So, by the way, if you ever count them, you're going to see there are 14. It's not just 10, but it's 10 basic categories. The mitzvahs between ourselves and Hashem start with our faith. They start with our thoughts, our machshava, our concepts of Hashem. And then we have, I am Hashem, have no other gods before me. Then we transition into the next part of who man is, which is our speech, which is obviously a little bit more kind of like brought down into this world. And those mitzvahs of speech we are commanded to do by don't take his name in vain, right? Don't swear falsely. So that's already meaning that our relationship with Hashem needs to be one, not only of how we relate to him in thought and in terms of our faith, but we actually have to express it in our words. but when we continue with that, then we have Shabbos and we have Kibbut Avim, right? Which is now the next level down, which is now in our actions, right? In terms of how we relate to resting and the fact that Hashem made the world, and we also have the rest. And in terms of our parents, for sure, that's an action, much more action oriented. So in the Aseret Dibros and the Ten Commandments, what we're doing is in our relationship to Hashem, we're going from the natural starting point, which is between ourselves and Hashem in terms of thought, and then we bring it down into speech and into action. If you look on the other half of the other five of the commandments, so they start again with action, because we all assume that action is the essential factor for dealing with our fellow man, right? So we start with don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't kidnap, right? Even though it says don't steal, but Rashi says that the Gemara learns that means not to kidnap. So those are very action oriented, right? It means a person, Chasrom, wants to be commanded, relate to, his fellow man. If he's killing, that kind of like that spoils the whole thing, etc. But that's not where we go to. We go to the next step, which is don't swear falsely, don't testify falsely. Again, when we use our speech, not to swear. That's the first. When we said don't testify, when we talk about don't testify falsely. So again, that's between man and fellow man. But I might have thought, well, speech is not as intense, and maybe the Torah is not so makpid, is not so strict about how we deal with our fellow man in terms of speech. But then we go, the final step is, it even goes, we're not even supposed to covet. We're not even to think, wow, I really wish I had that guy's car, wish I had the guy's property, whatever it might be, which is only thoughts. And really, no one's going to know about that except ourselves and Hashem. But I would have thought that maybe it's not really particularly essential in terms of a relationship with fellow man, right? Fellow man is, if I don't kill, be a good person, right? Everybody says today, be a good person, and being a good person doesn't mean how do you think about the other guy. If you tell him, I'm so nice to this guy, I give him a lot of charity and this and that, but I actually hate him. No one's going to say, well, it might say that's not such a nice thing, but no one's going to hold you, call you to task. That's like that you shouldn't be. That's like way off. But when it comes to the mitzvahs in the Aseret Dibros and Ten Commandments, so we're actually, when it comes to the mitzvahs between us and Hashem and man, so we're going the other way, which is we're going to start with action, which we all would understand is the starting point of our relationship with fellow man. But then that's not good enough. Hashem says, no, I want you to speak in a way, not misuse your speech in terms of your fellow man. And again, it's not just a question of, let me just say, it's not just the question that it's an issue of that it's wrong. That it could be wrong, but it doesn't have to be part of the Ten Commandments, right? We're talking about how did it make its way into the Ten Commandments? It makes its way into the Ten Commandments because Hashem's saying, no, in mitzvahs between man and fellow man, if you don't have your speech in place, you're missing an essential component of what the Torah expects of us as Yidden, and in terms of our relationship with fellow man. Meaning there's no mitzvahs like this when it comes to the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There's no mitzvahs of, as far as I know, testifying falsely. It might fall into some other rubric, some other category, but there's no mitzvah of misusing speech. It's don't kill, don't steal, etc. But they're almost always action related. But then the Torah goes even further and then says, no, that's not good enough. You shouldn't even covet. You shouldn't even desire your neighbor's property. You should realize that everything you have is from Hashem. Everything that he has is from Hashem. Shalom Yisrael, like that should be it. But we don't do, we want to go into that deeper category. We want to affect our thoughts. So what's fascinating is if you analyze, this is all from the Maharal, by the way. If you analyze the flow of the first of the Ten Commandments and of the 5 of the Ten Commandments, and then the second of the 5 of the Ten Commandments, you realize that there's this beautiful symmetry that's going on between our relationship between Hashem saying, don't leave it up there, bring it down here, right? And when it comes to fellow man, don't leave it down here, bring it up there, right? So there's this beautiful picture that the Aseret Dibros gives us. All right, I hope that that's fairly clear because it's very extremely fundamental in our outlook, how we relate to based on our relationship with Hashem and our relationship to fellow man. I'll come back to the some ideas in terms of the Seres Dibros and Matan Torah, but I'll tell you, I have two stories to tell over today. Two little stories. This story is a story from the Kotzker Rebbe and then the Ger Rebbe. Now, in Polish Chasidus, there was different sorts of Chasidus. There was Polish Chasidus, and there was Hungarian Chasidus, and there was Russian Chasidus, right? And in Polish Chasidus, for those of us that have been there, so you had one of the strands of Polish Chasidus was Ger, right? The Ger Chasidus is probably the biggest Chasidus in the world today. It's a huge in numbers. They have their headquarters are here, and in Europe it was also huge. One of the things that Chassidim that Ger is known for, or Gur, because it comes from a town called Gur Kalwarie, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, outside of Warsaw. One of the things that they were very strong about was not being fluffy, very exacting. Every word counts. They're very self-demanding. So there's a story about the Ger Rebbe who sent a letter to, I forget who it was from. He said, and he said that I missed the days of when we were in the base medrash, when we were learning by the Kotzker Rebbe, where there was lightning and thunder in the base medrash. So he sent it to the Alexander Rebbe. There were two great kings, so to speak, in Poland, in Polish Chasidus. There was Ger and Alexander. We don't have really too much from Alexander today. But those are the two, they each had 100,000 Chassidim each. So the Alexander Rebbe got this message, and he kind of held on to it, but at a certain point he saw the Ger Rebbe, and he said, Ger Rebbe, to Sfas Emes, he said, what exactly did you mean when you said, you missed the days of the Kotzker Rebbe, that it was like lightning and thunder by Har Sinai? What exactly does it mean? That's, Ger was not, they're not the poetic, flourishing type, flowery type. So he told him to follow a little analogy. He said, imagine that the Jews are coming out of Mitzrayim, and they're told, this is going to be it. Mamish Maimon Har Sinai, Seres Dibros, Ten Commandments, Hashem talks to the Yidden. It's like an experience which obviously none of us can be even imagine, but we obviously know that it's been powerful enough to propel us through these thousands of years. So he said they're waiting for Hashem's great, revelation to mankind. And what do they hear? They hear, don't kill. Don't be a murderer. So it's what? Don't do what? Don't murder? What exactly? Do we need to be told that here? Hashem, what exactly, what does it mean? Don't kill. I mean, what is that? What is that? What does it mean exactly? Don't kidnap. We were thinking of kidnapping somebody? So, a lot of these things were a little bit disturbing. What did that mean? So he said, but when Hashem was telling us don't kill, what he was saying was, don't do something which is in the category of killing, which means it doesn't mean that when a person goes out, he's going to take a gun with him, Chas v'shalom, he's going to do some crazy act. He would never do such a thing. But if it comes to somebody makes a joke at him, or he says something, this person says something, and he just looks at him like, wow, you're out to lunch. Who are you? And he looks at him in a negative way, you could kill him. A person could feel, we all know these experiences that we've had in our lives. Listen, everything's from Hashem, and we have to do our best to just hold them and be, flexible, etc. But that the sense that even those little things can be called like killing. When a person, we're not going to kidnap anybody, right? Adultery, chas v'shalom. But there is things that are under that category where a person has to be sensitive. And he said, when we were in the Kotzker Rebbe's base medrash, we learned it was like in that place, it was Har Sinai. Since the Kotzker Rebbe was so demanding on us, he made sure we were being honest with ourselves. So that's what that experience was like. It was like Har Sinai. When we had that revelation, we realized when Hashem's telling us don't kill, he's telling us a whole range of human activities. Says don't kidnap, means don't take the guy's time, don't show off his whatever. Maybe we could all put things into different categories. And he says that's what I miss. I miss that clarity of the times we were in the Kotzker's base medrash where we knew the person says a nasty word, it could be like killing, right? Anyway, so that's a little bit of the Aseret, nice little story on the Aseret Dibros. I wanted to just make a point over here. Also, another point in the Maharal, a very famous medrash, very famous Gemara. The Gemara says something rather remarkable, and I just want to make it clear, just to clarify what it means according to the Maharal, to the best of my ability. The Gemara says that the Jews came to Har Sinai, and Hashem asked them, "Do you want the Torah?" So they said, "Nasa v'nishma, we definitely want it." So Hashem said, so it says that they encamped. So the question I just asked was in Tosfos. The Gemara says they encamped tachtis Sahar. They camped by the foot of the mountain. So the word tachtis is not the normal word for the foot of the mountain. It really means under the mountain. So the Gemara says the very famous saying, which is that Hashem took the mountain and he held it over them, and he told them, if you'll take the Torah, good. And if not, this will be your burial place. So many commentators say, what exactly happened? Was Har Sinai uprooted? Is that what happened? Like, did that really happen? And it could be did. Like, listen, we had enough miracles in the history of our people that like it'd be just fine if that's what happened. But the Maharal says that it's an analogy. And this is in general, when you hear stories from the Gemara and you kind of wonder, like, what's that about? So sometimes you have to know that there's stories that have some actual truth to them. They're always true, but the question is, it happened. The mountain was held over their head, right? It doesn't mean that it had to be, but there's certain midrashim that say the mountain was held over their head, and that's what it meant. It was really a mountain over their head. Or it means something else. And that's like all the Ba'al Midrashim too. And you have to be careful because when Midrashim, sometimes you'll hear a Midrash, you'll be like, what does that mean? Right? And when I won't go through the Midrashim that we probably have heard, many of us that we wonder, like, what exactly happened there. It does not necessarily mean that it happened in physical, in real time. So the Maharal says that when the Jewish people wanted to take the Torah, let me step back. Tosfos asked the famous question that when the Jews were asked, they want the Torah, they said, Nasa v'nishma. And then at a later, so that's what Gemara says, they really, really wanted it. The Gemara says, however, in Shabbos, that they said, the Shem said, no, I'm picking up the mountain over your head, and you got it, you have to take it. So there's a few answers, like, did we want it? Would he have to be forced? What was going on? So the Maharal says an extremely fundamental concept. He says there's no question the Jewish people wanted to take the Torah. They said, Nasa v'nishma, we're going to do it, and then we'll understand it later. We'll hear it, and we'll understand later. Had that been the formulation of our relationship to Torah, that would have meant it's basically subjective, which means we want to do the Torah. We want to fulfill the Torah, which sounds like it's up to us. If you want to keep the Torah, good. If you don't want to keep the Torah, well, that's what free choice is all about. And Hashem wanted to tell them that if you understand the nature of a relationship with Hashem and understand the nature of doing Hashem's will, so that's not a formula. It's not an ultimate formula to say, I want to do it. the I isn't what's happening, because then that's a selfish sort of religion. If the purpose of Torah is to do Hashem's ratzon, is to do Hashem's will, so then we have to have a mountain overhead in order to teach us, not that there's a mountain literally, but in the same way that if we could imagine, let's say, standing on the railroad tracks, and the train is now fast approaching. Do you want to stay on the tracks? Or you want to get off the tracks? So a person, any normal person would say, like, that isn't really a question. I have to get off the tracks. When a person has an experience of ultimate reality, of ultimate truth, he's not thinking, I do want to keep Torah, I don't want to keep Torah, it is a nice thing, it's not a nice thing, it's not Nasa V'Nishma. Nasa V'Nishma would have meant that it's up to us, we like the idea. But there's another aspect of Torah of like, this is it, this is Hashem's will, this is the divine plan, this is the divine blueprint. And therefore, that's what the Medrash is trying to, the Gemara is trying to teach us, that there's a certain relationship to Torah that we have, which is Nasa V'Nishma, of really wanting it, hopefully. And then there's another relationship of our relationship with the Torah, which is not dependent on our wanting it or not wanting it. It's a question of its ultimate reality, and ultimate reality you just have to do. I just think it's an important idea, but this mountain over the head is. But I do want to like make a point that not to get anybody to I don't want to have any religious OCD stuff going over here. There's a reality that each one of us has to figure out, how do we connect to the Torah and how do we connect to Hashem's ratzon and His will, and there's like it translates into reality and has to be dealt with in a very human way. So if a person feels not necessarily motivated to do Torah, so that's fine. That's totally understandable and has to be then worked with. But I don't want to, I'm not trying to talk over here about Jewish guilt. That like I have to do it. I'm going to go to Gehenna. I'm going to burn. It's like that's not what Torah is about. But there is an aspect which is good for us as healthy human beings, hopefully, to know that Torah is really a kind of this divine calling, which kind of calls out to us and says, here I am, and I'm calling to you to do something. Okay. Maybe I'll end with this story. I want to tell you a murder report that I saw. I saw here in the Sfas Emes. I'll tell you, Sfas Emes, everybody has like sworn that they just, I don't know what the world did without Sfas Emes. I just don't know, like, how did people get up in the morning? Anyway, so the Sfas Emes says something totally remarkable. The Sfas Emes says, I'm not going to go looking for the psukim now. It says that Yisro, when he wanted to keep the Torah, it says he heard everything they did. Actually, no, it's too important. Let me just do the pasuk here. The Torah says something very kind of strange, enigmatic. What the Gemara means, what the Torah wants here. It says when Yisro heard what had happened, excuse me, right by Har Sinai. So it says right in the beginning, V'yishma Yisro. He said, what did he hear? He heard everything that Hashem had done for them. That he took him out. Well, if he heard everything, so then he heard that he took them out of Mitzrayim. What does the pasuk mean over here? It seems to be extremely redundant. These are the kind of questions you often hear, but this is really problematic. He heard everything that happened, that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. Obviously, if you heard everything that happened, he took. So he says, I have to just read this line and then I'll try to explain it. It's Hashem. The line in the Sfas Emes, which is just like, he has so many startling lines. He says, what does it mean? Apirush shebekoach yitzias Mitzrayim niftach hapesach begerim. That through Yitzias Mitzrayim there was an opening that was opened up for gerim. What does it mean? What is hearing this special mention that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim? Those extra words, what did it have to tell us with Mitzrayim? So he said that Mitzrayim was all about this mixture of good and evil. Where we were slaves to a lack of connection with ourselves, a lack of clarity, a lack of truth, Right? A slave clearly doesn't have his own orientation and his own ability to decide what's okay, what's not okay. When we came out of Mitzrayim, we were now set aside as an Am Kodesh. So the good and the bad, the Tov V'Ra, which is mixed in this world, which we live with, and which started at the time of Adam Rishon, was then clarified. It was clear that there was going to be Tov in this world, and that Tov would be carried by the Am Kodesh, what he calls the Am Kodesh. That this holy nation, which is going to be dedicated to Hashem, and the Jewish people, again, even though we have challenges, but in our essence, we have now things have been clarified in Yetzias Mitzrayim. Yetzias Mitzrayim wasn't like good guy, just like good guy, bad guy. Yetzias Mitzrayim meant that all of that confusion of good and evil that was all together, of Tov V'Ra, that became clarified. He said, how did that affect the nations around us? He said, there were different reactions, two basic reactions. There was one basic reaction was, we're not interested. We're not interested. We don't care. Don't tell me about Torah. Don't tell me about Ratzon Hashem. Don't tell me about anything. But he says there were some people, Yisro being one of them, that he said, there were people that in the nations that wanted to connect to Hashem's will. They wanted to do what Hashem wanted. But now, since the source of that was now given over to the Jewish people, they would need to go to the Jewish people to do that ultimate truth, to do that ultimate good. And therefore, that's what happened, that Yisro was stirred up because the Jewish people came out of Mitzrayim. Once the Jewish people come out of Mitzrayim, that means that the Tov V'Ra reality has now been clarified. Again, we're going to have to go back to Golus. That's what happened by the Chet Egel, right? When we sinned to the golden calf. We lost that clarity. We lost that reality. But for those precious days, from the time of going out of Mitzrayim until the golden calf, there was a time of ultimate clarity, ultimate truth. And with that magnet, a person either could fight the magnet or say, no, I want to be part of that magnet. But that was dependent on their free choice. So it says when there was an opening for the Gerim, it meant the nations of the world would now have an opportunity to go after that which was ultimate truth and ultimately right. All right. So that was so when we see the Kleis, when we come out of Mitzrayim, we shouldn't just think it's like, some sort of like Baruch Hashem, we beat the bad guys. Right? It's much deeper than that. Let me just say one more story and then we'll hold it up. There's a story about two great Hasidic Rebbes, the Triska Rebbe and the Varka Rebbe. And they had a very close relationship. I've told this story before, maybe Howard remembers it, that between the Varka Rebbe and the Triska Rebbe, there were two great Hasidic Rebbes in Poland, and they used to send letters back and forth to each other. Every Erev Shabbos, and there was one person who used to do the job, and he did it for years. Sure enough, one of these, after so many times back and forth, it was Erev Shabbos because it was close enough that they could send letters. He would send a letter, they'd send one back, and then the person would make it back for Shabbos. So this rider, this horse, this horseman, one time he just was like, he can't handle it. His curiosity was too great. He decides, I want to read the letter. And he opens the letter. He knows he shouldn't do it. He goes into the wood like it shouldn't be seen. Opens the letter. It's blank. He was like, what? It's blank. How could that be? He puts it back in, folds it in such a way that the Rebbe won't know, the other Rebbe won't know, gives over the letter, and he takes the letter back, go back to the Triska Rebbe, goes from the Varka to the Triska, and he's back, and he can't, his curiosity is just bursting. And he opens it, it goes to the side, blank. He's beside himself. And he can't talk to the Rebbe, he can't go in, he's beside himself. So Rebbe finally, so at a certain point, he was like, I can't hold this in. I've got to go to the Rebbe. So he said, Rebbe, I don't understand. I've been sending these messages for so long. And I know I was wrong in doing it, but I saw what was I saw there was nothing on the page. He said, how could I have been sent? This is like a joke? Like what? So he said, the Rebbe, you don't understand. He said, when Hashem gave the Torah, I'll give you a mashal, the Rebbe said. when the Hashem gave the Torah, he gave what Gemara says black fire on white fire, which means there's black letters and there's white parchment. That represents the black fire and the white fire, which we'll explain what it means in a second. He said, for years we used to write a communication, but after a while the love between us became so intense, we didn't have to write anything. We would just send the white, because the white was the pure fire. The black was the message, but the white fire was, and that white parchment, which is how it's represented, was the love of connection between myself, between the Triska and the Barker Rebbe. And he said we didn't have to write anything and we would understand in that. And he says when Hashem gave the Torah, he gave a black ink, and he gave, so to speak, a black fire and white fire. The black is what it says. The white is what it doesn't say. The white is the love, is the caring, the connection. And he said, therefore, what you saw, you thought was blank, but you didn't understand that it's filled with love. So when we look at a Sefer Torah, we see the black, and then we think that's white. It's nothing. They said, no. What it means is the black is with the message, and the white is the love behind that message. So when we're coming to this Parsha, you should just know there's a lot of deep connection between us. And if you have any question about that, just like look at the Jewish people back in Eretz HaKodesh and all the beautiful communities wherever you gentlemen are. In Chutz La'aretz also with Torah, like it just, it's miraculous. We're just miraculous. Anyway, so a quick review, talked about the 10 Commandments between man and God, between man and God, man and man, and how we have to do everything, both speech and to do thought, speech, and action. Then we had the story about the Kotzker Rebbe and how the 10 Commandments were all really about not just don't kill, but all about the deeper meaning of don't kill, the idea of holding the mountain over our heads. It's the idea of feeling like that's an obligated thing. And then, but as far as Sem is saying we came out of Mitzrayim, means there was a clarity that was gained. Jewish people now, we had a status, now the rest of the world would have their choice to decide which way they would want to go. And then our lovely story about the Barker Rebbe and the Triska Rebbe, when we should feel the love of the white fire, the parchment between us and Hashem, and we should all have a deep and meaningful connection to Hashem and to his beautiful Torah. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Rebbe.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good
Great
show.
show today. Have a good show.
Okay.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Okay.